February, aka the shortest month of the year, it is also Black History Month as well. And so one of the things that we are seeing more and more like within the news or anything else is just kind of like the changing of how Black History Month is taught. We see that a lot of Black History Month and the things that we learn are being kind of, and it's kind of always happened since we were children, they're being watered down in order to make white people feel more comfortable. Like, like, honestly, if you think about it, the fact that, like, when you were a child, how much of Malcolm X's story did you really learn? Like, you get an introductory lesson, kind of, sort of, but they don't really go into depth about certain things. And so it's just kind of the way you think about it, it's just kind of beginning to change more and more. And you're seeing, like, laws being passed about critical race theory as well and things like that. And, that's the buzzword of the day. And so, like, we just kind of wanted to talk about Black History Month and kind of the way that they're just trying to change history, for lack of a better word. They're trying to make things more peaceful or tame than they were. Like, think about it on MLK Day, even though that's in January. Think of all the Martin Luther King quotes that you see. They're typically the most tame and positive of Martin Luther King quotes. And they kind of don't give the full person or the full pursuit of everything that he was talking about. Like, Martin Luther King wanted equality on multiple levels, and if you really read the things that he was talking about, they don't make a lot of people comfortable. Like, they're made to make, like, I don't want to just say racist, they're made to make people who are, white people, for lack of a better word, they're made to make them think, and to really just make them kind of feel away. And so I just kind of wanted to, like, start this whole conversation with, like, kind of going back to when y'all were children, like, how was Black history taught to y'all when y'all were in school?
I think so. I got two ways to look at it. First of all, critical race theory, I think, I see that phrase and just get, I don't know, it just reminds me of, like, defund the police and cancel student loans and lock her up and build the wall. It's just, like, one of those things that's, like, it's more than one word, but it's, like, a political phrase that people use, and then they really don't really know what it means, really what they mean. They use like as a catch-all. I think like conservative Republican people say, oh, critical race theory. Oh, you want to just teach my 5-year-old Timmy to go and hate himself for being white. And then like super liberal people like think that like critical race theory means that like you're not allowed to just even mention race. You have to just talk about everybody as, oh, white and black people always got along. And the answer is usually like, somewhere in the middle. Like I feel like you just ask people what's critical race theory. Like most people really don't know. They just, have like it's like a catch-all, all of that. So like,
just to give a brief explainer, not even cut you off. The main tenet of critical race theory is basically to just teach people about the intrinsic racism that's buried within all systems. Just to make sure that we explain that. I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. Yeah. I know that we didn't say that. I didn't say that. Just as a general, just to make it at its baseline, just teach about the intrinsic racism within all systems, even when it's not actively perpetuated, just to kind of explain to you, oh, okay, there's racism here, here, and here.
Because to your point, a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, because I gotta look up some of the examples that people use to on both sides. And most of the time, it's like there's one school like in some blue area where like they make the white kids go and apologize to the black kids in like 5, which is like a crazy example. And then like on the flip side, like there's like some conservative state where like they'll ban the teaching of like some type of like we genocided the Indians or Native Americans that lived here. Like there's like so many extremes, but then most of the time it's like really like I really don't think this as it is like not just not a big deal, but like I think this is just like I said, it's the next hot thing to yell at each other about on social media. And I think the real argument is just the way we discuss like just history, like black history just in general. Like not in the right, like again, I don't think you need to tell little Timmy like to hate himself for being white. I think that's ridiculous. But yeah, like you said, we went to a school that gave our books were made at Bob Jones University in South Carolina, and Bob Jones University is a very conservative, very very conservative, right wing fringe institution, and our books were very pro-American, pro-imperialism, like not too much black history. And there's a lot of things we didn't learn about. There was no mention of Malcolm X in any of our history books. There might have been something about MLK. There might have been something about Dred Scott and Rosa Parks and stuff like that. But like to me, that's what's more important, just like teaching people basic. Like getting into the structural racism thing. Well, I don't know how many schools are really doing that. And
it's a distraction as well.
Yeah, I just think like that critical race theory is a red herring in this situation. It's more about just teaching black everybody, just about history, America, like black history, like black people, like our history, and just American history in general. Like history classes in America are pretty bad. Like I was reading a book, I didn't finish it last year. I forgot what the book was called. Basically, it was a guy, a history teacher, and he was like, "Yeah, all history classes in the United States suck. We leave out all this stuff we don't talk about, or in kids, and we simplify stories, and then people go and they parrot the stories year after year. Oh, Native Americans and the Pilgrims had a fun little thing. It was Thanksgiving, all that. Way more complex situation. Imperialism, whether it's Europeans invading Africa, like, oh yeah, it was cool. They gave them culture, all that. No, it was imperialism. It was evil. It was wrong. But you know, as a kid, you just get a very glance at everything. Oh, and then in the 1800s, the Europeans came and settled Africa.
It's very much like storybook.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And now they speak French and they speak English and all that. In Spanish, like, yeah. I don't know.
No, I agree with you because I didn't really get real history until I was in college.
Same
when
here.
you're in college, you kind of get like, and even it may not be perfect, but it's like more of a. It takes like a lot of the safety rails off that you had, at least within our school, and as you're saying, like within a lot of schools. Like I had like one professor I really loved when I was in his history class. I felt like I was getting whole stories. When you're getting stuff at like certain institutions, like you know, we all went to a freaking Christian high school, middle school, whatever you want to call it, but. May not exist in a couple years. But in the same breath, you know, when you're sitting there, you're getting like one side of the story. You're not getting the entirety of it. Like Black history or a lot of other stuff. We didn't get so much of the story. We got the part that you want us to hear, that you think is best for us, but it's like you missed out on so much. Like I took a class on slavery, and it's like, bro, there's no reason why. Like I feel like in like a regular, it don't gotta be in elementary school, but there's no reason why I feel like Black kids around the country shouldn't know Toussaint Louverture or know like things about the Haitian Revolution and like that type of stuff. It doesn't make any sense that it's like I'm learning about all this for the first time when I'm sitting in a college class and I'm learning about, oh shoot, they were the first nation to like overthrow supreme power. I may learn that in passing, but a lot of what I'm learning is going to be about the French rather than about like the Haitians that overthrew them. And it is like really disturbing when you think about how much we're not getting. Like from childhood on, like it's just all so watered down. Like bro, when I'm doing Black history projects when I'm in kindergarten, just to kind of like explain things, I'm talking about Tiger Woods. And it's not to say Tiger Woods ain't important, but I mean like, all right, that's history, but there's so much that isn't being taught, and there's so much that they don't get, and there's so much that we just try to overlook or bury within everything else. And it's just like, yo, look, history ain't always pretty, and it's like, you know, like it ain't about making white kids feel bad about slavery or any of these other topics or any of these other things, but it's just like you don't get so much and you just miss out and you just don't understand. And it's just, even if you think of things like critical race theory, when these lessons aren't taught to children, like they fade away, they don't happen, like they literally don't understand it. Like, I mean, it's a very disturbing thing, and that's why I just, you know, it's like, oh, okay, cool. How did y'all feel about like, you know, what you learned when you were kids or like all that other type of stuff? I know you gave a long-winded response, so, you know, what y'all got?
I mean, like, obviously, you know, we all went to the same school. So, like,
in my school, man, damn.
Well, I'm saying your parents may have taught you something mine didn't. I'm not, like, say my parents bad, but maybe you heard something.
I mean, the way I receive information, like, you know, I remember my friend Martin Luther King, like, that movie.
Our friend Martin.
Our friend, whatever.
Well, I thought you really had a nigga name.
My friend.
But like that movie, but you gotta remember, man, with a lot of stuff with kids, man, you have to know it now, because at that point, like, how are you going to receive the information to be able to, you know what I'm saying, not, you know, feel away or maybe like get overwhelmed. I mean, that's the point of going to college, the point maybe of going to high school in different levels. I mean, like, there's levels to math, there's levels to history, you know what I mean? Like, it's, you don't just give a kid, hey man, like, I want to let you know, like, before we jump into this, you know, like Kuta Kinte or, you know what I'm saying, roots. Like, you put roots on. No, you start small. You start, you know, VeggieTales. You maybe go to, like you said, the movie we just talked about. Like, it's steps to this. And then you look at, like, the Holocaust. Like, I think the Holocaust is a very good example of, like, the way Germany handles the situation. Like, you can't even say, or you can't denounce the Holocaust. Like, you can't say that it never happened. I'm actually kind of interested to find out, like, how they teach that or how that goes in their history classes, because that's kind of a quote-unquote black eye, you know what I'm saying, obviously on German history, and it's kind of, you know, obviously not equivalent, but, you know what I'm saying, it's still in the same realm of how it's a black eye in America. And I think if Americans, or if America took a stance on the way that maybe Germany takes on it, and again, I don't live in Germany, so I don't know, all I know is from what I've read and seen, I think we would have a better understanding of a non-tolerance for it. And I think that we wouldn't be like, from a white person's perspective, the people that support this wouldn't be so defensive, because it's just a part of like our history. It's a part of, you know what I'm saying, like a mistake we've made. And it doesn't expand just to black people. There's obviously Native Americans, with, you know what I'm saying, were a mistake that America did. I mean, it happens when it's a melting pot of different cultures and ethnicities and different backgrounds. There's going to be mistakes because there's going to be survival situations. 100 years from now, God forbid, obviously, you know, America's still America. They're still going to be talking about Black lives and how that shaped moving forward, how we hopefully got out of that and became a more stronger union. And, you know what I'm saying, that's just a part of history. So I don't think that, from a kid's perspective, just to backtrack, like, from a kid's perspective, like, you don't need to beat a kid down with the craziest things. I like the fact that you said, like, in college, you took a class on slavery because, one, you were more mature enough to understand the impact of how it played a role in your ethnicity and your background.
Fair.
And, you know what I'm saying, and I also respect maybe if it was a white kid that was in that class, because that shows that what they learned in the elementary or middle school or high school intrigued them enough to find out, hey, what did, you know what I'm saying, my ancestors, or what did my background have an impact on Dante, or have an impact on my friend Darian, and how that shaped him, or how that shaped him, you know, growing up, and how that impacts him to this day. So, and you're seeing that too, like a lot of, you know, white people or other races have more of an interest in us because of, it shows the history that we're working. I mean, it's working like in classrooms and intriguing us and stuff like that. And I think that if you're supporting, you know, critical race theory or whatever that is, like, we're backtracking on progress from that at that point, because it shows it's working. Like, people are interested. Black Lives Matter wouldn't be a thing if, you know what I'm saying, we weren't teaching when we were 20, 30 years ago in classrooms about Black history. So,
I don't know. Just to take it back to answer the question, I think, like, and to shoot our school a little bit, I remember in 5th grade we had to, I think Aaron was the only one here, we had to watch Roots, the whole movie in class as 5th graders. So, like, when I was thinking, like, that was probably the most in-depth Black history experience we had in the whole time we were there, which is really interesting that we got that in 5th grade and not in high school. But to your point, I do think that it is good because in high school too, for them to get at least some exposure, like when you're teaching American history, because what happened to African Americans in this country is American history. We literally built this country. You know, a lot of what we have today is because of the slave labor that they had with African Americans. So it's important to not only just skim past that, but make that a critical part. We wouldn't have this today because of what African Americans had to do in these countries. We wouldn't have a lot of things, like a lot of these inventions, not like a Black History once a year spotlight where you're talking about Dred Scott and MLK, like like traffic light, like all that stuff. Like, it's a lot of things, not just a spotlight, but like over the course while you're teaching American history, you got to weave that in, because that was a big part of why America is what it is today, free slave labor. So yeah, I do agree. In college, you can have more like specialized, like more in depth, like various areas that you can take classes on and learn about slavery in particular, or learn about the housing inequality and stuff like that. But I think in high school, at least, like, it's important for kids to at least get some exposure, like Black and white, just to get exposure to what happened, and not go into college like with this narrow point of view. Because if you don't get that, at least to some extent in high school, maybe they're not going to go to college and be like, maybe I should take an African American history class, or maybe I should take a Black class. Like, if they had no exposure, I mean, today we're running out of excuses. I mean, there's still a lot of ignorant people out there, but it's easy to like look things up and find facts. History is so accessible now. More and more information is being put out there on what happened. It's hard to hide the truth and say, oh, slavery was only for this amount of time. Like, when you really look at the years, like even the civil rights movement, like, they make it seem like that was so long ago. They show it to us in black and white. It wasn't that long ago. My grandmother is still alive. She lived through that. She remembers it. Like, a lot of our grandmothers, like, were there during that time. So I think it's important to at least get that ingrained, like, just as far as like the education for high schoolers, like just getting that some exposure to that while they're there.
I think one of the other problems is we have all our American history, well, at least in our history taught in America is very European, like and like
Eurocentric.
Yeah, Eurocentric, just like you said something about the Haitian Revolution, and like people will say, oh, we're not gonna teach that in school. I mean, that wasn't about America, but I mean, as many times as you learn about World War I, which was mainly a European conflict, or Napoleon and the Napoleonic Wars, and British and French wars in the 1700s. That's what we learned about. I remember because I had to study that stuff like all the time, and but you don't really learn about. You have a whole section of that, or you have a whole section on the Holocaust, which is obviously awful, whatever. But you learn more about the Holocaust, I feel like, than you learn about like slavery.
Exactly.
Or at least that's what stood out to me. I mean, because you learn more about World War II than you do about like slavery. You just get like a little blur.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I didn't mean to touch you.
wait, it's all an accident.
What is distraction?
I think with your point, I think it's easier to talk about something that doesn't affect your country, to like the Holocaust. The Holocaust was something that happened somewhere else rather than as reflected on your own.
There's a lot of more atrocities that happen in the world, just like ones that happen in white countries or European countries, or for white people, like wow, that's really important. That happened in my ancestors from England, or my ancestors are from France or Poland,
Polish,
or whatever. Like I said, like I forgot what country it was, Cambodia. That one dictator did something that killed millions and millions of people. Mao Zedong. It's a great leap forward, killed millions of people. So I mean, just stuff like that. Like that's where if you're gonna, because you have classes that are called international history,
fair,
but it's really just European history.
And that's the big. That's the troubling thing. But I guess even kind of going beyond that. That's what I was talking earlier. It's like one of my, now that y'all put the Holocaust, like one of my biggest things that I think about, kind of sort of with just with the way that we kind of handle history these days as it relates to Black history. It's not to say that we don't do it, but kind of with the whitewashing of it and just kind of a lot of this stuff. And in a lot of these school districts where they change things, I'm not trying to say it's everywhere, but within those school districts, they're trying to tailor a lot of lesson plans around white guilt. And so when you do that type of stuff, do you end up getting to a situation where, it's like, say what?
You said at the point of resentment?
Not even resentment, is what I was gonna say, but just if you're tailoring everything around white guilt and you don't want them to feel bad, do you end up in situations where it's like the Holocaust, where there are so many deniers, or even where you're removing certain texts within certain things? Like they got rid of that little mouse book within certain history classes recently because they're like, oh, okay, it's got nudity in it, so we don't want that around. And it's like, all right, cool, you can say it's because of nudity or certain themes, but at the same time, it's bro, you getting rid of some of this history, because that's a book that is made to teach people about the Holocaust and to make it in a way that they can explain it and understand it. And then you end up in situations where you have not, and it's not just to talk about that, but it's you end up with a Whoopi Goldberg situation where there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the Holocaust, kind of sort of just overall it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how that situation went and what it was about. And a lot of this ends up being a possibility because you have, I'm not trying to say she had lack of education, but just generally speaking, you have people who don't understand these situations, they're not learning about it, you're trying to remove it from schools. And so then one day what happens when somebody says, slavery wasn't about race, it was about man's cruelty towards man. It ends up in the same situation. So I guess it's my doomsday, it's the worst possible scenario. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that's kind of just how I feel about the way things are just being removed or retaught, or rephrase so that they make other people feel comfortable with them. And I'm not trying to say, let's make little Timmy feel bad about being white. Not at all. But just generally speaking, to teach people about these things and how they're happening. And I feel like that ends up being a very dangerous and slippery slope that we're going down, where you start removing stuff or trying to make people feel comfortable with it.
I get that, but it's and I'm not advocating for making every white person today feel bad, because not everybody's directly linked. Maybe their grandfather was, or maybe their great grandfather was. I don't know what the ties were, but I think it's important. Like I was saying before, it's history. It is American history. So to just not talk about it is doing everybody a disservice. And honestly, too, with that. Even though we don't there's some people who are catering to not making them feel white guilt or whatever about African American slavery and all that stuff. We're still dealing with the aftermath of, or the effects of slavery, to this day, or of racism to this day. So if we're still, as Black people, have to deal with housing inequality, wealth inequality, we got to deal with all that stuff because of racism and slavery. We should talk about it. Them having not necessarily a silver spoon, but having more advantages when they come out. What is white guilt? I really just don't feel bad in that sense. So what? That's what happened. I think it's important for people to acknowledge that, and not calling you racist, not make, like Aaron was saying before, not making the kids apologize at 5 years old. That's not necessarily the case, but at least acknowledge what the history is. At least move forward, or at least in their growing curriculum, they learn that oh, this is why things aren't like equal between the two races, or this is why African Americans are the most like, or some they have a majority of like a majority of them are in poverty, or like minorities are in poverty and all that. But like it's important to have that context, that lens, because that is what American history is.
Yeah, I think it's a. So I think there's a difference between like being able to teach history, like that's fine, like this is what happened, and there's like, like some of this like, okay, we learned history, so like, are you gonna go home and hold your dad accountable, Timmy, next time your dad says something? Like I saw something that's the other day, like it was like at a college where they had them do like a blackboard post, like go out and call somebody out on systemic racism, but it has to be face to face and like stuff like that. That's like is because I think that's what people on the right and conservative think, because whatever critical race theory is, it's just stuff like that. And I think on the left, people hear critical race theory and think, oh, you just don't want your kid to learn about slavery or American history. And I just think people are conflating things, and it's I don't know, like there's extremes, and like, oh, this extreme right here. Oh, we definitely don't want that. Well, no shit, right? It's extreme. Of course we don't want that, right? But again, we need to just, as far as just being taught like history, like events that happened, and analyzing. This is why. These are 3 bullet points why this event happened, why this happened. Like that's what we need to improve on, like. For Black, but just American history in general.
Like, to add on that, it do need to be some layer of accountability, not necessarily like if nobody did anything wrong. I'm not saying like just find the nearest white person and say, hey, like you did all this, but like if they're doing something racist, or if they're acting in a manner that's not equitable, like then they should be held accountable whether it's by their kids, their friends, like, and we talk a lot about white allies and all that stuff. It is important, and that goes into the learning, because if you know. And that's taught to you in an early age. It's kind of ingrained in a sense. You're not just moving forward in ignorance, which is, again, like I was saying before, harder to like kind of stand by, because information is everywhere. But like it's so ingrained that they know, like, hey, like this is why my coworker might feel a way about this situation, or this is why my friend might feel a certain way. My dad says this or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that you just said. I guess that's why I'm like, yo, even within what Aaron said, it's like, yo, I agree with you. It's just that it's one of those things where it becomes a slippery slope, because it's like you keep trying to remove certain information. At a certain point, you are going to remove certain stuff that should be just base knowledge. Yeah, and that's why I feel like it does get scary, because it's just like, y'all going to keep telling people they don't need to learn this, they don't need to learn that. And it's like, yo, look, it's not to make people feel bad, but it just becomes, and I mean, a part of it is just, like you said, America's so politicized with every single topic, honestly, that it just kind of becomes hard, because like everything feels like it has to be on the left or on the right, and it's just like, nah, I'm really just trying to teach you history. It's like history, in all honesty, should be the easiest thing to teach, because it should be based on facts, because these are things that literally happen, and they should just be accounted. It should be the easiest subject of all time.
It's just facts.
Yeah, but it's literally fact. It just literally is what happened. But because we always have to make everything skew one way or the other, more so in recent times, it just kind of becomes so disgustingly hard, because it's like, you're trying to make everybody feel good within learning history, and it's like, look, a part of history learning, everybody ain't gonna feel good about the history that you learn about, even if you were like taking an African history class. Yeah. Bruh, Africans sold other Africans into slavery. It happened. Like, I mean, this is one of those things. Everybody always gonna feel positive about every little thing, but it's just like, you keep taking stuff away and chipping away at all the systems, then yes, at a certain point, it may reach a level where people just feel like, oh, we don't want to hear nothing about slavery. I'm not saying they're gonna get rid of Black History Month, but I mean, like, y'all should learn and understand these things. It's just a part of American history. It's your history. Even if you're on the other side where your people enslaved others, it's just history. That's what you have to learn. Exactly. And that's why I hate so much of the fragility, and I don't like to use all these liberal buzzwords that I've been using today. But it's just not, because it goes into stuff like white fragility, white guilt. It's like you're looking so much into other people's feelings, and it's just like, bro, it's history. Exactly. History just to learn the facts. It happened, Like, I ain't saying you got to go home and apologize to somebody, but you just learn it. That's it. I'm sorry. My bad. That was my soapbox.
Sorry, you spitting though. Yeah. I don't know. I just just teach history. But like our place is like really like not teaching history? I guess that's what I need to see. That's what I don't understand about this debate. Like, you're like district saying, oh, we're just not going to talk
They
about...
removed critical race theory, but critical race theory is such a broad term because it's been around for like 40 plus years.
Right.
So I understand exactly what, and I got you. I understand exactly what you're saying, but they used it.
Yeah, I was wondering that too because like when we're reflecting on our high school experience and all that, we already weren't learning it. So what are you removing? That's what I was wondering.
And
like,
that's
what is it to remove? You barely teach it anyway.
I got you, but it's just like because you're even getting rid of the possibility, and it's like, and it's not to say like the news is like 100%, but it's like you read these articles about how teachers feel like they have to tailor their lesson plans because you don't want to hear from somebody's parents, or you want to keep everything as calm and cool as possible, and it just makes it difficult to teach it. I'm not trying to say that every school district in America, out of the thousands and thousands of classrooms that we have, are trying to change things. It's just a simple matter that we have so many states where these things are trying to change. And if you look at Virginia with like Glenn Youngkin and like how he basically said, all right, we're not teaching critical race theory in classrooms. What the hell does that mean?
Thank you. I don't know what that means.
But that's why it's scary because you don't know where the line is.
But the thing is,
I
think that power even do that? Like,
I just think.
I mean, he's not the school
I just think
board.
the answer that means nothing. Like,
It
it
should
literally
mean
does
nothing.
not mean anything.
Fair enough, I got you. So like it's one of those things where it's like it could mean nothing, but it could mean everything.
Yeah.
Just because of like where people decide to draw the line. That's why it's not.
Even in the article you sent like about teachers getting threats and losing and facing that losing jobs because their kid went home and told their parents.
That's why I say it's like where are people going to draw the line? It's just like okay, fine. What makes it critical race theory? I'm just teaching about facts. If I'm just teaching you literally about history. And I'm scared I'm gonna lose my job, then yeah, this Black history lesson about to get whitewashed real fast because I don't want to get fired. I mean, and that's why I say it's the scariest
I
stuff.
just think it's just two different debates. Like the critical race theory, I don't think anybody will be talking about this in a year. Like
buzzwords, yes, I got you.
I think the actual teaching of history, American history, is a problem. And if you take it out of the lens of just political, like. There's just too much shit, like, just as people we don't know about history. Black history, I mean, mostly Black history, but again, I don't know, I guess the way I look at Black history, you're just like, Black people get treated like shit all the time, so, like, is there any, like, surprise that, like, you get, like, one little blurb in a history book? I feel like you should take 10 history books from just random students across the country, like, maybe a couple nice, Martin Luther King, nice guy, got shot, cool guy, no mentions of Malcolm X, talk about Rosa Parks, that's it.
As a kid, I
didn't even realize how long slavery lasted. I thought that was something that just happened in like the 1800s.
The last slave was
back
pre 1865. That was the last slave.
Yeah, but I'm saying like, went back to 1600s. Like that thing lasted centuries.
It lasted longer than America.
Yes. Like you don't know that as a kid. Like you don't know like.
You just thought it was like a quick little revolution.
For other countries got all the way before we
did.
We were late on the fact.
I didn't know that. Like I had no idea. Like that was a thing.
We were late on the fact.
Like that's what it is. No, he's right. The imperialist European countries were like Britain. Yeah, no, Britain was like looking at us like, oh, y'all wow.
Oh wait.
Like,
y'all still have slaves.
Oh, the colony still got slaves.
Hold on. That's not your lieutenant. That's a slave.
Bruh, and you see how many. That's why Black people were joining the Redcoats because they were promising them freedom during the Revolutionary War. It is the wildest thing in the world. Every other country was off that way, but we were still like, all right, we gonna hold these niggas down.
And the sad part is, I'm sure that they got pressure because it's like, if you want to be with us, you got to let these slaves go. We can't look bad with you, bro. Like,
Bro, even during the Civil War, that's why. Wait, who was the South getting ready to get help? Was the South getting ready to get help by like London? But it was weird.
Some being crazy, but then they were like, nah, we can't bang them.
I'm about to say it's all over the place. Like, just you're right. Overall, like the whole understanding of slavery and race and all these things, it does need to change. It's just like the scariest thing when you're in this country, just because it's like, yo, anytime that you feel like you can make progress in the teaching, they put up so many walls and blocks. And I'm not here to argue about the benefits of CRT or any of that type of stuff, but just generally speaking, if you start to give people certain knowledge, other people will get afraid. And it's not just in America, that's just an intrinsic thing where it's just like, you learn about things, people get afraid, and you shut them down because you think these ideas are built to make people feel bad or change.
I guess I just don't understand, like, if you put in your history book, like, an extended section on just, slavery started in England, and then it came here, and, like, it's like a European thing, like, just a section on that, I don't see what people would be offended by. Like, it's when you take that
because then you're making it a culture of slavery, and that becomes more intrinsic. I don't know.
I think we're conflating points there. I think that's conflating points. I think if you take that and then try to like do more into that, and then like, oh, little Timmy, like, oh, I want you to bring in some Hennessy and some chicken, and we're gonna have a like.
What's wrong me about this whole situation? To start about it's like people preach about like freedom of speech and like you can, it's like an illusion. But then when it applies to black people or learning about black people or the history, we got to censor it. Like, how can you tell a teacher, how can you tell a school that you can't teach a certain area of history or a certain buzzword of history, but then in the same like breath talk about like my freedoms of being able to put a mask on or be able to vote or be able to do all these other things? It's like, how can you say that in the same breath? That's the shit that like blows me. Is it's like it doesn't make sense how you can say those in two different words. Like that's just something that's clicked in my head. It's like when we talk about the land of the free and the main people that are pushing this are Republicans. And those are the same ones that are pushing against mass mandates, the same ones that are pushing against their rights and freedom of speech and all that stuff, censorship. Fox News, great. But then you in the same breath are telling me what you can do. That is another form of slavery in a way as well.
Yeah.
Like you telling me what I can and can't do, but you can do the same thing. That's the mind blowing thing about the whole entire situation.
Yeah, that's because America, I almost said racist, but America has a lot of racist infrastructure. A lot at its core, like it was built on the fact that some people are better than other people. Like we were literally inferior beings like 200 years ago, less than that. We were considered like, whether you even want to go back to the 3/5 compromise, we weren't even considered full human beings. So to them, it's not really like, oh, like we're hiding important history. We're hiding their history. Like we're acknowledging them now, but like, hey, get over it. Like we made you guys full equals. People now. Yeah. We made you equals. Like all is fair. Like you guys have even footing now because you're all free. You can do whatever you want. But no, like it dates back. Like we don't have the wealth. A lot of us are in debt. From college, like from finally trying to make something of ourselves out of the racial system that you guys put us in, that our parents and grandparents couldn't necessarily go to college, and now we're going to be in debt. So like they have to, teaching this will help some of those people understand why it goes into debates like the loan forgiveness for, like, hopefully for certain communities, anybody deserves loan forgiveness is black people, and that's one I'm willing to die on. But like you have to have that history, you have to have that knowledge to understand all these different things.
Yeah, I just teach the kids the history. That's literally the only thing I have to say about
history. Should be straightforward, man.
I don't know, like all like the stuff around it, like whatever. Just like we don't teach history and
like facts.
That's the only subject where you can just straightforward, because you can teach Bama how to count, you can teach them how to do geometry. They got all these different type of weird stuff. They do math now. They do the problem backwards and all that.
And even then, though, I'll say though, like I mean, it's not that the part that's not straightforward is like when you can talk, oh, a war happened, and then people will argue about the causes of the war and stuff like stuff like that. Whatever, fine. But like,
not the actual war itself.
Yeah, you go to college and you can learn the cause.
Different nuance can be taught in college to an extent.
But like, I don't know, like let's talk about events that happen and give like an actual American history, like. And I could stop saying like, but 2022, we can learn about the American Revolution. Maybe we don't have to spend 5 months on the American Revolution, you know what I mean? Or 5 months on World War II. There are other things we can learn about in American history. Yeah. Or we don't have to spend the entire school year learning about World War One or learning about the Spanish-American War. I mean, those are important wars, right?
That was very important, actually. The Spanish Armada didn't get hit up by that weather, we would be speaking Spanish right now. Espanol right now, Aaron.
Yeah, no, I figured, but
we be calling you Aaron.
Okay.
Si, senor.
Yeah. I'm just saying, let's just learn a bit more about history. That's just what I'm most passionate about when it comes to this topic.
Yeah. Straightforward learning. Fair enough. At the end of the day, teach the kids the facts.
Just the facts. Not adding no extra.
I ain't trying to make you lean one way or the
other.
Bad.
We're just telling you the facts.
And not even just facts. Just stop picking like the tried and true. Oh, Team America. Yeah, America's great.
Yeah, the facts is
the
everybody's
five
facts.
Little stories, right? You know what I mean? Like the 5 stories that you learn 8 times over the course of your K5 to 12th grade.
US
you know what I mean? Like bullshit, and I probably about your history, but there's other things that happen in the U.S. besides There was a gas crisis in 1980. You can learn that in 12th grade, right?
And learn about the Great Migration and shit like that. Let's learn. Let's really get into America.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, cause like you learn about I don't know. This This whole topic is just, it's weird because like there's so many different ways to look at it. Like I hate that phrase.
I hate it too because I don't understand it. I really don't get it.
No one understands it. That's the thing.
Like,
It's
really
just,
trying
it's
to-
words.
It's not trying to get the baseline understanding of it. It's very just all over.
No,
the
like,
place.
yeah, there's actual academic.
Yeah, and then the rest of it is just
term for it.
buzzword.
And then people just take it, now it just applies to everything, right? It's like,
I told you, that's why it's scary. Because literally, you can just use CRT to get rid of everything. If you want to, and depending on how extreme you are. Which is why teaching people the basic, not basic, but teach people the facts and just the central things that have happened in history are so important. Just so you understand this. It doesn't have to go to, literally, honestly, if you just learn facts, you can just literally learn all of the fucking racist stuff that happened in history. You don't even really need them to put it to you. If you learn the facts of how
becomes
stuff
obvious.
happened, it becomes very obvious that a
Becomes
lot
obvious.
of wars in history are just based because two people fought different.
Yeah.
And if not thought different, they look different. And so therefore one of them had to die. In terms of how they thought, not my personal opinion. So I'm just saying, it's very simple for war, death, all that shit. For the history.
It'll come to them. Yeah, it'll come to them. Like, kids gonna ask questions too. Like, even
Right.
the kid just asking, why were they enslaved for so long? Like, just that simple question will unearth so many different things that black people still go through to this day.
It's like the same thing. Kids will look for knowledge no matter what the topic is. Like,
Exactly.
people try to sit around and be
Tell
like,
me
yo, don't put certain stuff in my kids' cartoons. I don't want them to think about that. If you just let them, they're going to ask questions regardless.
Yeah, you
So,
don't have to
that's
show
what I'm
them a lynching or some shit.
Yeah.
You can.
They're gonna naturally come up.
I was like, kids always got questions. That's what it is. Tell them the truth when they ask you. That's, I mean, no offense. I can't tell you how to parent. I don't got kids, but just, generally speaking.
Damn, that's smooth.